Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Well, I'm excited to come to you today with a video about how to get coverage but keep it looking natural. That has got to be the #1 question or comment that I get from clients. Most of my clients are mature and we want to look like ourselves but a little better. We want our skin to look like skin. So when we see somebody, that instead of them saying, "Oh, your makeup looks good," we want them to say your skin looks good. So that's what our video is going to be about today, and it has to do with the way we prep it, what we use, and how we use it. So if you're interested in learning about that, keep on watching. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first thing I'm going to suggest is probably not going to shock any of you that have watched some of my videos, and it's good skincare. And I don't mean an expensive skincare regimen. I just mean taking good care of your skin. The smoother the canvas, the better the result we're going to get with any makeup. So make sure that you're taking good care of your skin. Now, one thing that I will point out, or this kind of a tip, is that you may need to adjust your skincare routine slightly once you start using these creams, because these creams are moisturizing. They're not like a cream to powder that sits dry on the face. They're a moisturizing kind of cream. So what I have found is in the past, before I started using this, I would be if I was using like a double wear matte kind of foundation to make it last all day, I would have to pile on moisturizer underneath it to make sure that my skin didn't feel like it was getting sucked dry. I no longer have to do this. I put the slightest amount of a very light moisturizer if I need it at all. But that's one thing that I've tweaked since I've started using this. So that's something I want you to think about and was shared with me. When you start using these creams, it can take your skin a couple of weeks to kind of acclimate, because they are different than the liquid foundations and powder foundations that we've been used to. So, give your skin a little bit of time to go, oh, hey, what's this new on my face, and how's it going to, work with what I've got going on? But what I found now, after it's almost a year, it'll be a year here in October, of using this, is that I've been able to drastically reduce the amount of moisturizer that I use during the day. And that also helps with keeping it to look natural, because the less on your face, actually the better. So there's the first tip, is to kind of get your skincare routine down and experiment a little bit with these creams to see what you may need to tweak to make it work. All right, second thing with the prep kind of mode is you may want to skip a primer. That was something that, for several years on YouTube, like primer. Everybody thought you had to have a primer. I think they have a time and place. I mainly think that folks who may have oily skin can benefit somewhat from like an oil mattifying primer in certain areas. But I know I have used several primers in the past that are those the silicone primers, like Smashbox. They make one, and several other companies do as well. If you use a silicone-based primer, while it feels beautifully silky on the skin, the creams will kind of slide around on it. So I find that, one, I don't need a primer. The reason I was using a primer before was to help with longevity. I don't need that with this. So I would highly recommend not using a silicone primer. And if you have to use a primer, to control oil, use it lightly, and obviously only in the areas that you need. So there's the first couple of tips with the prep. Now, I guess the third tip that I'll go into, and it's kind of starting into the application, but I guess it can round out the prep area, is I want you to do your eyes first. Now, this is something that I've trained myself to do, and it felt awkward at first, but it helps in several ways, and I'm going to just start doing it as we talk. I'm using this Viseart eye primer, which is something that if you have oily eyelids, might be something that would be helpful for you. I mean, there's other brands that make them. This is just the one I'm trying right now. I've just got a little bit of it on my ring finger. I'm gonna kind of rub that. Probably even got too much. But I take and just put that on my eyes. What I have found, and I used to be one that I thought eye primers were just a bunch of hooey and they were just trying to sell you something extra. So I would go without them, or I'd test like one eye with them, one eye without them. And I was able to see a difference with the way that my eyeshadow stayed on, and it wouldn't crease when I would wear one. So I'm a proponent of them. Like I said, I've been trying that one for a few weeks now, and I'm really enjoying it. Now it doesn't do anything to cover up discoloration like darkness on my eyes that you see, but I do love the formula. So there you go, Busy Art. Now I will jump into, so I've got some things here today thrown into one of my double deckers. You don't need all of this, but I like it. So I'm going to start with eyes. I've got a little eyeshadow section here, and since this is kind of a natural look, I really just picked some neutral naturals with one color that would kind of blend with my shirt. So I'm going to take a little flat shader brush, get this basic color here. It's called Cupcake. It's just a nice all over lid color. All right, let's see if I can get that on. I've got a mirror down here, so if you catch me looking in a couple of areas, I'm either using my phone or the mirror to try to put this on. Okay, so I do that just to start to cover up that darkness in the eyes. And it looks kind of weird because, you know, my eyes are like, ooh, and nothing's done on the rest of my face, which is what I meant by I had to really kind of train myself to do my eyes first. A couple of reasons why I like this. One, doing your eyes first, it lets you start to, you know, see some structure in your face. So I like that. And two, if you have anything that falls down or drops, and you know, if shadows are powder, then inevitably something's going to kind of fall. Then you don't have to worry about with trying to wipe that cream away and putting more cream on top of it. Now our creams do blend beautifully, but still, the less, you know, times that you have to put a layer down or take a layer off, the better. All right, so I have got that there. Now, just keeping it super simple today, because the question was, you know, how do I get that natural me but better look? So I'm not going to go really over the top. I'm going to go into basic with a little brush there, and I do always do a little tap off. But go into basic, which is my crease color. Throw a little above. You'll see I go above the crease. I've got hooded eyes. And I'm working on an entire video about how do we deal with hooded eyes. But anyway, so you see I go above the crease so that you can still see it slightly. I mean, this isn't a main color or anything, but I don't want it to completely disappear when I close my eyes. Now, I was using this brush here, so I use this end to put the basic, and I'm just going to flip it and go into my little bit darker color right here and put in my corner. And on a natural day, you know, I don't go crazy with it. I just put enough to give me a little definition out there. And the tip on this one's nice. It's not so small, like you can blend it. You can put it on and blend it with the same end, which I like. And then I will usually flip my brush over and just make sure that that line isn't harsh. All right, so I got that. And then the other thing I do, this won't surprise those of you that have watched before, is I don't use eyeliner for several reasons, which I've talked about, but I usually will just use a black eyeshadow, and this is my absolute favorite brush ever. It is the Wayne Goss number 8, making an appearance again. I think it's made an appearance in almost every one of my videos, but it is just the absolute tiniest brush to be able to get right in there to do tight lining. Now you could also use, so you see the end, we've got, let me see if I can put that down. We've got this double-ended one here that I used to put on my eyeshadow already, that base color. So we've got one that you could use too, and it's a little pointier, so it would work as well if you don't have this one, but I do, so I'm going to use it. So again, just dip it into that black shadow and tapping it off, and I'm going to look down at my mirror so that I don't do anything crazy. Now all I'm doing is just really rubbing that into the lash line, so you shouldn't see a lot of it above the lash line. It's just going to deepen it and make my lashes look thicker, which is what I want. All right, so I got a little on the bottom, which is okay. Since we don't have anything down there yet, it's easy to wipe away. All right, let's go in on this side. I have to train myself too to try not to blink or to pull the brush away when I do blink so that I don't get it all over my eye. All right, there we go. That should probably be pretty good. I love a deep lash line, so I add a little bit more there. And like I said, I go into black. Now I'm 50, I'll be 51 in November, and I always hear that about, you know, don't use black eyeliner because it's so harsh. And if you don't like black eyeliner, don't use black eyeliner. This is black shadow I'm using, so it's a little less harsh. But still, if you want to do dark brown, if you want to do dark gray, you do you, whatever color. I just happen to like the black because it really helps me out some. All right, so, and I am an eyelash curler. I can't imagine not curling mine because they're fairly straight. So let me get those curled really quickly for you. And we'll keep moving. All right, grab my current favorite, I guess. You know, I kind of bought this CoverGirl Lash Exact because I felt like I had tried every mascara known to man. And if you've been watching my empties, you know I've been through several, and you know some of them I might like for a little bit, and then it's like, okay, it's not doing it for me. And even the expensive ones, just not doing it. I was at Walmart, I guess, one day, and I saw this one, and I thought I had probably tried it before, but I couldn't remember. But I like the wand. Now, I'm typically not a rubber bristle fan. And this one had rubber bristles, but I liked it because of the size of it. I'm going to try to hold that up there where you can see it without it being too big. So it's not like super long and spiky, and it's not a super huge wand where I'm going to stick myself in the eye because I've got small eyes. So I started using it, and at first I thought, well, okay, this is okay. You know, something better comes along, that's fine. But I have gotten to where I really enjoy this one, and like it's, you know, it's CoverGirl from the drugstore, so doesn't cost a fortune. All right, so there's on top. Now I don't do the bottom yet because we are going to do a little work under there. So doing my eyes, I've already started to get a little bit of structure. Now I will also, let me find it, go ahead and do my brows before I do anything else, because these really start to give some frame to the face. And you know, if you follow me for a while, let me get it turned around here, that I love my Benefit Precisely My Brow because it comes in a gray. So it's one of those little twist up tiny ones. So let me pop this on real fast. Now I'm going to put this on with the disclaimer that I am not a brow expert. Nobody is ever going to come running to me saying, oh my gosh, your brows are so fantastic, you have got to teach me your ways. That's just not going to happen. But we do the best with what we have, and that's what I'm doing. So I have loved this. It's a little, if you haven't tried it, if you have tried Anastasia before, this one's a little softer and creamier. So I try to be a little more careful because it can go on heavier really easy. So I try to be real careful when I'm putting that on. Now, it can also look like, if you're not used to doing your brows first, it can look very Groucho Marx-like whoa, but I promise it's something that I have just gotten used to, and I appreciate that, so I can see what I'm doing. All right, so what's next? I've got some notes over here if I'm looking, because I don't want to ramble and make this like a 2-hour video. All right, so I talked about doing your eyes first. The other thing about doing your eyes first is that it did give time for that little bit of moisturizer that I use to sink in, instead of just putting that moisturizer on and then going in with something on top of it. So there's another kind of plug for doing your eyes first. Now, the next tip that I've got for you is, it's kind of a different one, but it's to do the rest of your makeup backwards. So to do the rest of your makeup in reverse. So we'll talk about what I mean by that. Typically, you know, as I was kind of taught, you would go in now with like a layer of your foundation, and then you would start building coverage, and then you would start covering things up. We're going to kind of work in reverse, because remember, we're wanting that natural look. You know, we're not wanting to look, we're not necessarily wanting somebody to look at us and see all of our makeup. We're wanting them to look at us and see us, to see our skin, but better, okay? So we're going to start backwards. Now, With this, if I did your color match for you, I would have included it in there. If you told me you had some areas of redness or things like that, I would have shared a color corrector with you. I would say probably 90% of my clients have, ask for something that needs a color corrector. So, and depending on your skin tone, I may have given you this one here, which I'm sure looks straight up orange. And if you got it, you thought, she is crazy, I can't put this on my face, which is exactly what I thought when I was matched to it a year ago. But with this makeup, and I've told you it's different. It's not just like we look at your skin and we match one color all over. We're looking at the different tones in your skin as artists, and the first thing that we want to do is match the darkest tone. So what I look at, if I were matching my face right now, I would look at, I've got redness here, I've got, my nose is, darker than, you see I've got some lighter spots here on my face. Up here is a little lighter. I've got some redness in here. My nose is red. I've got a little redness and, sun damage here from years of being out in the sun. So I definitely need a little correction. So instead of starting with foundation, I'm going to start with color corrector, and I'm going to start with this one here called Mango. I've just got a little double-ended, kind of a smaller brush. Now the key to this Mango, and especially if we're looking for a natural coverage, is to use as little of it as possible, okay? So here, I want you to see how I do this. I've got the brush, there's nothing on it, right? Yep, nothing on it. I take it, I tap, and I pull it. All right, so I've got some now. I didn't push it in, I didn't swipe it, I didn't dig it in, I just put a little bit in. So I'm gonna start putting that on areas where I know I'm going to want to color correct. All right. Now, if it's your base layer, you can buff it in if you want to, like with a circle motion, or you can stamp it in, kind of like I'm doing. Whichever you prefer, doesn't matter, as long as you kind of get it on there. Now, it will matter with the next layer that we put on. So, with the first one, you can do whichever way you prefer. All right, so that may look a little orange, and that's okay. I'm gonna get it right where I have any redness. And again, when I go back, I'm just doing that to get a little bit on my brush, because I want just barely enough. And you can see, I mean, it picks up enough to see in the camera. Our creams are so pigmented, and especially the, you're going to hear me use the term highlight, and that for us are these kind of foundation colors. Typically people think of a highlight as like something glimmery or shimmery. Well, we call that an illuminator, so kind of getting the word straight. But these highlights here are so pigmented that it does not take a lot to achieve what you need. All right, so what else do I need? I may put a little bit here. I don't want so much of it in one area, but I'm gonna push a little bit of it there. I am even gonna go, you can see I've got some dark kind of circles. I'm gonna do the tiniest bit and go up under there. That was one thing that was so hard when I was first getting used to this foundation, was how little I need to use. And I made a joke in one of my videos about it's like spaghetti. When you get as much as you think you're going to need, then take about half of it and you've still got too much. So if you didn't hear that joke, I'm going to use it again. And sorry if it's twice, but it's so true. And it resonated with some of you. You shared that with me. But less is definitely more with this. All right, so I've gotten those areas. Now I know it looks a little wonky, but trust me, it all comes together. The next tip is you definitely want to use a sponge. So our Perfector sponge is the one I love. It works the same as beauty blenders or the other sponges. You get it wet under the water and then you squeeze it out and squeeze it out. And you want it close to dry. Like, you don't want it dry. You want it slightly damp, but you don't want it wet. So here's what I do to make sure I kind of get it at the right level. Is when I get up to take a shower in the morning, I'll go ahead and, before I get in the shower, I put it under the faucet and I run it. You kind of pump it there a couple of times to get water throughout it. And then I squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. I put it in the towel, kind of do like this and squish it to get out as much water as possible. And then I set it on my dresser to let it just kind of air dry a little bit while I take my shower, while I come in and start to get ready. So it probably sits a good, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, maybe even 30 minutes before I get to it by the time I've gotten to this step. And so it's just the slightest bit damp, which is the perfect level, because if it's too wet, you're going to pull off what you've just put on. If it's too dry, it's not going to do anything. So that's something to kind of play with there. If you notice that you're using this perfector and it's pulling off any of the color, I mean, it's supposed to pull off the excess, but if it's pulling off the color, it may be too wet, or you may be swiping with it, because some other foundations I've used in the past, we would actually apply them with the Beauty Blender with the sponge, but that's not the case here. This one is meant to help. You'll see I'm going over any areas where I put that color corrector. It is meant to help take off any excess, because we tend to be a little heavy-handed, and help us build up those layers. And we won't have layers everywhere. That's another tip about keeping this natural looking. We're only going to have layers in a couple of areas. Other than that, one layer on the face, and that really helps with texture that you might have. All right, so again, I'm going to go over those because I really want to make sure I've done that. And as you can see, that orangeness from mango, it's already kind of settling in to where it's not screaming at us anymore. All right, so I've done that. Now, here's the thing. You may think, well, why bother with this color corrector mango? You know, we're on the redness. Why don't I just put on more of a different color of my main highlight? What we found is, and I've tried it too, and it holds true, that you've got to match those darkest tones first. If I just went in with my main highlight on my chin, it wouldn't cover the redness. Whereas putting that layer of mango and then going in with my main highlight helps it stay on longer and helps it stay covered. So that's why we match you with a color corrector if you ask about it for redness. So now, keeping in kind of going in that reverse order, I know my inclination right now would be like, okay, now I'm ready to put on my foundation, but I'm not. What I want to do, remember I mentioned that all of our creams have coverage, so I'm going to go to my contour color here. So this one here, and mine's called Astoria. Now contour, I'm going to do it, I'm thinking I'll use this brush. I've got a couple of brushes I like to use for it, but I'm going to use this end of this brush. Let me show you, and then I'll tell you about it. So this one, the contours are drier, so you can kind of pounce in there a little bit harder. You can see I've got it on a little more than half of the brush. You're going to use contour. It's supposed to mimic a shadow. So you're going to use it anywhere that, you know, the sun would not hit. Now, I know I get comments from people like, I don't want any contour, you know, I'm scared of it, because you've seen people kind of go either over the top with contour, like in an artistic way, and while it can be beautiful, it is certainly not an everyday natural look. Or, you know, you've gotten confused with contour and bronzer. So what I want to share with you here is how to use contour to kind of sculpt your face, because if you look, I've got a pretty round face. What I want to do is sculpt some cheekbones and kind of narrow this just a hair, because contour, it is what will give you, sometimes I hear people say, you know, people that wear mascara, you've just got that mascara look. Well, here's the secret sauce. It is in the contour and the highlight, because it gives you that three-dimensional look instead of having one flat color on your face. So I've got that on my brush. I'm going to go in under where my cheekbones are, like right under it where you can feel that hollow, and I'm going to start to contour. Now remember, the only thing I've got on is a little color corrector, but look, our contours give coverage, so I didn't need to put a layer of foundation on underneath that. So I love the fact that that's one layer, because like I said, the fewer layers, the less texture it's going to show. And if you're like me, I've got texture I don't want to show. All right, so now we're going to come up here and do our little contour of our forehead. And people's forehead shapes are different, so I can help you certainly with, you know, where do I contour, where do I not contour? You know, I've got a round face, or maybe you've already got kind of a angular face. You may not need to contour up here. So those are all things that I can help you out with. Sorry, I got a hair that's getting down there. But can you see already where that gave me some color to my skin? It's given me some life. Remember, we still haven't put on any foundation, right? Okay, so I've got that sort of contoured. As I will confess, when I first started using this, I was using, this is 2 colors deeper than what I use now, or this is 2 colors deeper than what I started with. And when I first started, I was like, oh, you know, look at here, and you know, and now I'm like, oh, give me more contour. So you may get addicted to having that little bit of sculpting in your face. This looks scary to you right now. It's okay. It is going to blend out. If you saw my other videos, you know by the end, it blends. All right, so I come under here. I'm contouring under here just to create a little shadow using that same color contour that I've used everywhere. So what that does just creates a little definition between my jaw and my neck, okay? All right, so I've got my contour. I want a little more up here. I have to put a little more than usual when I'm on camera because the lights tend to drown it out a little bit. So, all right, let's see here. Now, so we've contoured. So we've gone backwards. Thinking about this, remembering contour mimics a shadow. This is not a bronzer. We'll go to a bronzer here in just a minute. Now we are going to put on a little bit of foundation, which is highlight. Let's see which brush. Oh, here's the one I want to use. I've got a blush and bronzer brush. See, this is kind of a loose end here, and this one is a little more compact. I love this one for putting on my main highlight, or what we would call foundation. So I have got it right here in the middle, and it is candle lit. So I'm going to take, and I'm trying not to blind you with that mirror, I'm going to dip this brush into it. Well, that's probably not a good way to do it. All right, dip my brush into it. You can see I've got some on the brush. I'm going to start going over areas that we haven't touched yet. I'm not going to put a lot on my cheek yet because we are still coming in with a lip and cheek here in a minute. Now I'm going to go over all those areas that we color corrected. I want you to notice one thing for certain. I am not buffing this on those areas, because if I do, I'm going to buff away all of that color correcting that we did. I am pressing this. Okay, sorry, my hair's driving me crazy. So I'm pressing this everywhere. That way, this that's underneath it will not move. All right, and the key is, this is something that's taken me a while too, is using as little as possible, because, you know, using too much, you're going to get that kind of sticky feeling. But once you learn to kind of have a lighter hand with it, it all works out. All right, let's see here. Okay, and I still have kind of stayed away from this general area here because, again, I know I'm getting ready to put a blush color there. So I want to take my perfector sponge and really make sure that I press everywhere. I just put that main highlight on because it's probably the one that you're going to tend to over apply more than any of them. All right, so take time, press that. You know, pressing it does a couple of things. One, it pulls off any excess, and two, it helps push that into your skin so that it looks more natural. All right. Is that good? Sometimes I get a little crazy with my perfector, but I love it. Okay, next thing I'm going to do before I put on some blush is I had put a little color corrector here under my eyes to take care of those blue areas, and you see that the blueness is kind of gone, but I want a little bit of brightness there as well. So when I color matched you, and if you need a link to a color match form, I will list it below. If you try to pick out the colors yourself, you're probably not going to pick the right ones. Maybe you'll luck into it, but I know I sure wouldn't have, because I just didn't understand how the colors in these creams worked. So if you want a color match, drop me a response on my color match form linked below, and I will help you out. So I'm going to go into this highlight here called White Peach. It is my brightener color. Just put a little bit on the end of one of these brushes. And I'm going to go in, and I'm not going to swipe like everywhere. I know that's another thing too. I've seen so many folks on YouTube, and most of them are younger, come down, do this huge triangle, and put all of this concealer on under there, and then put all this powder on under the concealer. And I'm sorry, my eyes are just too old for that. I'm 50, almost 51. I have got some texture. I have got some, my husband calls it wear and tear, but I think he meant it in a nice way. So anyway, so I just put a little, like in some dots in that. I don't do the full triangle. I just kind of do a little, almost dots of a triangle, and then blend that in. So I'm going to take my perfector already, because your under eye is one of the first areas that's going to kind of give away aging. So I want to make sure that I have as little product on there as possible, but enough to do what I need. So if you can see, that really just kind of brightened that up under there for me. And I like that. And I don't want crazy brightness, but that was enough to brighten that look. All right, where did my brush go? There it is. Because I'm going to do a little bit more brightening. So back in that same color, that White Peach, I'm going to take it right here. I can't see in the camera. I'm going to take it right here down my nose. A little right here. It just seems like this little triangle of light place. Kind of helps brighten your face. And I put a little on my chin. And then a little bit for me, because I have darkness right here, around there. Again, patting, like I told you, I love this Perfector sponge. It is what has really helped me keep things natural looking. Okay. Now, if you want to, you can actually even go in with a little contour on your nose. I'm not going to today, but you certainly can, and it can look natural as well. So let's get into lip and cheek. I am going to, oh gosh, this right here is one of my favorites ever, Cindy. It's like, oh my gosh, I think it's super beautiful, but I don't typically wear a pink blush with a purple shirt, so I'm going to do this little mix here. I've got Summer Love and Plum, so I'm just going to kind of mix a little in both, because that's the way I roll. Now, I mentioned our highlights are highly pigmented. So are our blushes, most of them. There's a few of them that are kind of a nude natural. So when you're putting on lip and cheek color, less is more. Now the really good thing about our creams is, there are no mistakes. You can wipe them away if you need, but it's easier to do it right in the first place. Other thing about our lip and cheeks is they go on a little more intense, and then after a few minutes it's going to settle down a little bit. So if you think that is a little bright, give it a few minutes and it'll lessen up some. All right, now I'm going to throw on some lips. I will grab that brush I showed you a little earlier, that kind of double-ended one. I use this end of it. And you can actually use your contour for a little bit of a lip liner, just to give you a little definition. That will help. It'll match your other contour for one thing, and it'll help just barely kind of outline that. Now, if I were going to wear, I can't do this and talk, if I were going to wear some off-the-wall lip color, probably not. But since I'm going to do a fairly natural one, this will just kind of mimic that shadow. All right. So I'll pat that down a little bit. And then I flip it, and this is actually a second brush because I like to keep my lip brush separate than the one I use for my eye. It's the same type of brush, but I have two of them. So I'm going to go in with a little of this lip color here. Just put it on the brush. Super natural. Fix that a little bit. All right, so there you go, almost. I've got one or two more things I want to share with you. You could stop with this if you want to. One thing I definitely want to do is add a little lower lash mascara. Some people do, some people don't. I like it. Now, a couple of things. One, you will notice I have not put a lick of powder on my face. We've got a setting powder here, and there's other powders out there. Here's the deal. Our powder on top of cream, if you use it lightly, you can certainly do it. With mature eyes and mature skin, I'm going to tell you to do it cautiously. I don't care what powder it is, do it cautiously. Because the reason that these creams look so natural and skin-like is that they kind of melt into your face, and then powder just doesn't look skin-like. So regardless of what powder it is, if you can do without it, do without it. But if you have tendency for things to move around, and I'm thinking like right here under the eyes might be, because during the day I laugh and I smile and all that kind of stuff. So that would be an area that I might want to set. So here's the thing. You would take, there's a couple of brushes, my other one's up right now, but this one's kind of a smaller, but it's fluffy. And I would just tap it in, okay? Just a tiny bit on there, and put just enough to lock that in so that it's not going anywhere. Again, just tap it, and then just enough to lock it in to where it's not going anywhere. If you feel like you need to set some other areas of your face, kind of follow that same route of just barely a tap and then put it on there. I'm not swiping, I'm just tapping it, and I use so little of it, but I do try to, set this sometimes, especially if it's hot and summery. I will do that, but I try to do without it if I can. Now, the last thing, and this is optional, this is for those of you that may be bronzer girls. So for me, this is enough color in my face, but if you're, in summer, or if you just tend to like your makeup a little more bronze, you can use, here's Bella bronzer. It looks super scary. So I use the fluffy end of the brush. Let me make sure I get in the right thing. Just tap it a couple of times like that. I already put probably, I'm going to put some of that on a paper towel because that's probably more than I'm going to need. And the difference here between a bronzer and contour is with bronzer, we're going right there in where the sun would hit us, and kind of on top of our cheeks. And then you can add some to your neck. All right, now what I want to do, because I feel like that's a little too much right there. So again, there are no mistakes in creams. I'm going to go back to my main highlight and just pop a little main highlight over that, because maybe I'm just not used to wearing as much bronzer, so I felt like it was a little bit too much. All right. So y'all, that's it. It has to do with prepping your skin, making sure that your canvas is ready to put on makeup. It has to do with using as little as possible, and that's why the creams here are great, because they've all got coverage. So I didn't have to put foundation where I was going to put contour, and I didn't have to put foundation where I was going to put blush, because that was going to give me any coverage that I needed anyway. And then, using a tiny amount, addressing those darkest tones first. And that's something that as the artist, I will help you with. So I hope this was helpful for you today. I know I get a lot of questions on it, so I wanted to do a quick video to help kind of just show you the process that I go through. If you have other questions, drop them below. I'll be glad to answer them or even address them in a video coming up. But until the next video, I will see you later.